All right, good morning, y'all. It is New Athens Project podcast, episode number 4? 5? That was 4 was last time.
Yeah, it's hard because you lose track of count as we're getting through May and stuff because it's been crazy busy. But yeah, this week was election week, so gosh, sorry. What was your impression of election week? Just from everything you saw from the numbers.
I was impressed. The numbers were actually insane. I did not expect Paxton to get as many votes as he did. Ken Paxton was in the race for senator, by the way, if you're not familiar, the Texas senator. And he absolutely crushed John Cornyn, his opposer. And yeah, like I said, it was just a really good turnout for voters, and that's exactly what we've been pushing for. It's just vote, and they voted.
For sure, yeah. And then obviously it was really big to see Mays Middleton win. He won the Attorney General's race. He's a younger guy. He was running against U.S. Representative Chip Roy, who was going to come back from Washington and run for a state office. But he lost by about, I think, 8 or 10 points, somewhere in there. But it was a decisive victory. So that was a big win, too. So he was kind of the initiator, Mays Middleton, of the bathroom, no men in women's bathrooms kind of thing in terms of like high schools and stuff in the sports avenue. But today we wanted to, so that was just a side issue, just pray a prayer of gratitude to God for just the turnout at the primaries and just that would continue to be reflected as we get closer and closer to November and we hit early voting, because this is going to be a big race against James Tallarico for Ken Paxton. And we know Ken Paxton is definitely not the best example of a moral figure, but he is the best candidate to stand in the way of extremely radical ideas that James Tallarico has, which we'll be doing a series on as we get closer to the fall. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Subscribe and like this video to see more content like this.
And speaking of radical ideology, today's subject is dehumanization and the image of God. So that's going to be our topic for today, and I guess we can just get started. Cord, do you have any points that you wanted to mention first?
So I just want to make a kind of a general statement at the beginning. We do not believe political violence is only on one side. So I'm saying one side as in left or right. Political left or political right. Now, but there is extremely overwhelming evidence that it is primarily accepted and primarily used on one side. So let's just start from the beginning. I know that can be a general statement that'll blow people off. It'll be like, no, the right's more violent. They have ICE and all that. So let's just go from the top. Before you shut us off, here's just some statistics we want to show you guys. According to YouGov, there are several stats that have come out. So most Americans say it's unacceptable to be happy about public figures' deaths, but younger and more liberal Americans are more likely to call it acceptable. The exact statistics are 44% of very liberal people consider political violence or happiness about public figures' deaths of the other side to be always or usually acceptable, or they are not sure. In other words, almost half of very liberal people are not sure whether it's okay to be happy about public figures' deaths.
Like they're questioning it.
Like they're questioning whether it's okay to be happy about death. Okay.
Which is just insane.
Versus the far right, it is a total of 10% which is still, I would say, too much for extreme conservatives. 10% aren't sure whether but it's a 90 to 10 versus a 56 to 44.
Right.
Conservative to liberal, respectively. So just from that first one, there's 4 statistics we're going to go over. Sorry, what are your first initial impressions and how would you respond to that?
Well, it's obviously there's a very huge difference between the two sides, the right and the left. And the left has already been evidencing itself in several instances and several within the last month.
Exactly.
And I don't know each individual circumstance specifically and in detail, but I do know that most of them were either a radical leftist who was out of their mind or an ISIS supporter or an Islamic supporter or radical Islam.
Which is a whole other issue.
Yes, that's a whole other podcast episode. But generally speaking, that is the rhetoric we're seeing, and that is the side we're seeing everything come from, generally.
Right, and this is not slanted information. This is just a matter of objectively looking at where people will answer polls. Because a lot of times people won't answer polls to their own detriment. But this poll is extremely it should bother us as Christians to say, hey, there's the entire political party that nearly half of them aren't sure whether it's okay to be happy about public figures' death. So that's the lighter topic. Now we're going to get to the other statistic that is the second of four. Now there's going to be four statistics we go through. These are from YouGov and then another source on here that combines three different sources for the polls. Then it gives the different metrics with each of those. So this one is, most Americans across the political spectrum say political violence is never justified, but younger and more liberal Americans are more likely to disagree. Now, here's the statistic. Across all U.S. adults, only, let's say, it is 28% of total U.S. adults say that only, actually, 72% of all U.S. adults say political violence is never justified. Right? So only 28% of total American U.S. adults believe violence is either sometimes justified, they're not sure, they won't say. Now, breaking that down between liberal and conservative, liberals, it's about the exact same amount. It is 45% of very liberal people believe that political violence is sometimes justified, or they're unsure, or they prefer not to say. Whereas conservatives, it is a total of 12%. Right. On the very conservative side of the spectrum. So I'm just going extreme left and extreme right, just because that's you're going to see the most obvious distinctions in terms of difference and where the radicals are on either side. So, just statistically, 45 to 12%. Sawyer, do you believe political violence is ever justified? 1. And 2, why do you think this disparity is happening?
Well, number one, I don't think that political violence is ever justified in any circumstance. Because we're talking about somebody believing it is okay to kill somebody, to murder somebody, simply because of a disagreement politically. Now, if we're talking about morality and general, like, what is true and what is good, there might be an argument that can be made for, what is the example? Men and women's bathrooms. Because that's a moral issue, that's not a political issue. That is that's a person-to-person safety issue.
Yeah, like
so we're talking about if somebody breaks into a house, it's fine for me to shoot the person that comes into my house and breaks in if I feel threatened. Like that's like the other side. That's like a better argument for violence. And honestly, at that point, it's not even violence. It's really just defending yourself and preserving human life.
Right. Exactly.
And it does require taking it. Necessarily sometimes killing somebody to protect everybody else, but that does not ever accept political violence, and yes. I think they're completely different issues. And I think the issue with political violence is ultimately rooted in, like this episode is entitled, the dehumanization of people. And again, like the title says, the image of God it should be, as Christians, it should be the foundation of how we view life in general. When we see somebody we disagree with, we view them as somebody made in the image of God, number one. And it's okay to disagree politically on values and things, but it is not okay to ever justify political violence because you disagree with someone. That is the opposite of what we believe as Christians. So like I said, it's never okay for political violence.
And a lot of this centers, and part of the reason we picked this topic for this week is because we literally were last week, we were going, oh, there's been an assassination attempt. Oh, there was an assassination attempt on Trump's daughter. Oh, there's an assassination attempt the next day. Like, it was literally, there was back-to-back days where we had assassination attempts or shootings around the White House. So we're talking about people who it is ingrained in their system that they can go into a political system or into a political place that ultimately they are more than likely disagree with what Trump's doing. And honestly, that's fair because we live in America and you can have a different opinion. That's the beauty of this country. But if your response because you have a different opinion is because the person who's sitting in the White House disagrees with you, I'm going to go shoot them, that is always the wrong answer. It's always objectively, morally wrong to try to kill someone because you disagree with them.
And it's interesting, too, because the left is generally the side that will say, oh, choose love and, all that, and be all, rainbows and happy and all that. But at the same time, they're encouraging people to kill people who disagree with them.
Exactly.
And look what happened to Charlie Kirk. He constantly was pushing an idea that was contrary to the LGBTQ ideology, and guess who murdered him?
Right.
Well, what evidence? Allegedly. But it just goes to show that even the quote unquote rhetoric that they're trying to put, which is just love everybody, that isn't even what they're doing in practice.
Yes.
So it's not an acceptance of everybody and everybody's opinion. It's my way or death, basically.
Essentially.
And that is the ideology that, kind of on a side note, that Islam brings, that the Sharia law brings. It's the idea of like, if you do not submit to this law, if you do not submit to Islam and to Sharia law, then you are to be killed.
Well, and this is the beauty of us Christians. What we believe is we say, hey, God gives us free will. This is something that's kind of interesting about the entire picture of, like, let's just say Christianity versus Islam, or conservatism versus leftism. We as Christians and conservatives believe that God allows everybody to make decisions on their own, but at the same time, he has a divine plan. He's orchestrating all throughout that. So there's that tension in Scripture, right? But if you believe, hey, God's a joke, I don't believe God's real, I'm actually going to, go live however I want to live, I'm going to support radical LGBTQ ideology in schools, I'm going to support Islam and its takeover of the West, right? All those things. If you say that, God allows you to have that space. Christians are not going to kill you because you have that ideology.
Exactly.
We're just going to say, hey, there's a line where you can't cross.
If you're a follower of Christ, this is not the way to walk in.
Say, in New York, Mamdani became mayor. That's the fruit of the Christians there. They've kind of let that happen, and the political system there has not helped that, because Christians just in general have disengaged from politics across the country. So we look at why this violence is happening. It's becoming more and more justified with the left side of the aisle. It's really because Christians, one, have sat back and, not paid attention, not gotten involved, but two, because people don't understand Christian morality and Christian values, which is every human life has value, one, and two, there's no circumstance where violence is justified, period.
And that puts the ideology of the left that says that political violence is justified. That indicates that they believe that they are God. They play God.
Exactly.
They are the judge. They get to decide whether or not it's right or wrong. And that, again, goes to objective and subjective truth, which we talked about in one of our other episodes. If you want to go check that out, link above. But again, it goes back to the idea of, like, control and wanting to be in the place of God. And instead of saying, I am a human made in the image of God, who treats others made in the image of God, who submit to someone higher than us.
Exactly.
Who loves us enough to send his son to die for us. I think it's insane to think that political violence is ever justified, and at the same time even say, like,
love
the
is
other
love.
side is extreme.
Yeah, love is love, the other side is extreme, but I believe political violence is justified. Not only is that oxymoronic, that's literally the definition of you have a literal insane ideology. It's not even like you literally double speaking, you're literally contradicting yourself. Like, there's all these ways that this is just, they do mental gymnastics, but it also will destroy them. It literally will corrupt them from the inside out, and they can never save themselves from that. Mm-hmm. So, at the end of this, we're going to have a very specific call to action for every Christian who's listening to this podcast, even non-Christian, who's just recognizing political violence in our culture and just how we should respond. But there's a couple more statistics. I'm just going to kind of blow through them. These are just combined statistics between Reuters, a couple Reuters polls, and a Marquette Law School poll, and just showing how many people support political violence across the spectrum. So you have, according to Marquette Law School, the total people supporting political violence on the Republican side is 6%, and on the Democratic side is 15%, so nearly double. According to Reuters, it's 6% and 7%, conservative and Democrat. respectively. And then another Reuters poll more recently was 3% for conservatives and 7% for Democrats. So just you could see either way, even if in the Reuters polls it was more closer, those are all also older polls. The Marquette Law School poll is more recent. The people are willing to support political violence on both sides, but it is overwhelmingly a liberal issue, especially the closer we've gotten to today and where we stand since Charlie Kirk's death. Now, there's one more statistic, and this is the one that, for me, was just mind-boggling because it shows kind of, you probably heard this phrase tossed around called Trump derangement syndrome, and how people think kind of Trump's the center of all their problems in the world right now. It really comes back to why we believe political violence is justified, and it honestly comes back to hate and like true hate, not just hey I disagree with you kind of hate, but biblical hate is literally you despise and you think someone is worth killing.
Right.
The Bible
it's literally
defines it.
They're not even a human. They're just an idea.
Right, exactly. There's someone who's opposed to what you believe, and that is all they are, and you cannot separate them from their ideas. Now, here's what the topic says on this. Comfort with political violence depends on the party and the purpose. So, here's some examples. Political violence against Republicans, Democrats, almost 10% of Democrats believe that they're comfortable with that. Against Democrats, conservatives, almost 6% of Republicans believe they're comfortable with political violence against Democrats. Now, restoring the right to abortion, 15% of Democrats, almost 15% of Democrats believe it's okay to have political violence in regards to that. Now, removing Donald Trump, this is the crazy one, and this is kind of where we'll kind of get the main picture in our mind. Donald Trump is a human being made in the image of God. Does that mean he's perfect? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And there are several things he does politically that even us as conservatives disagree with. And there's big, big pictures with that. Now, however, does that mean he has the right to be killed or should be killed for the gain of political violence?
Nope.
Absolutely not. Unbiblical, wrong, and absolutely immoral. Now, here's what the statistic says. 27% of Democrats are comfortable with political violence if it removes Trump from office.
That's sickening.
That is 1/4 of the Democrats you talk to, or 1/4 of your Democratic friends, believe it is okay to remove Trump, whether that be through arrest, and specifically through murder, because it's talking about political violence here, through murder, through assassination attempts, however, and we've seen this literally played out in the last week.
So just to put it into perspective, basically of the 45% of Democrats or far leftists that believe that political violence is okay, of that 40 whatever percent, 45, 27 believe that it's okay to remove Trump. 27 of that.
This is the total.
This is the total. Okay.
So of that 45%, 27 of those, not 27 of the 45, but 27 of the total 100.
Okay. Gotcha.
Believe that political violence, they're comfortable with it if it means the removal of Trump. That is by far on this graph we're seeing, and we can send you guys these graphs if you want the graphs. We'll send you the screenshots we took of the polls, and these will also send you the links as well. This is by far the greatest margin of all the violent comfort levels with political violence, and that is. I want to say it's shocking because it's really just a state of the moral culture we live in today, especially on the left. But it's also a matter of where is this coming from? Sorry, where are you seeing this massive, bash Trump specifically? And I'm not saying Trump is a good person or that necessarily he's the best candidate and we should all just get behind Trump and be Trumpites. I'm just saying because he's human, why is this statistic so big?
Well, I think the main issue is that we tend to react on emotion rather than respond with truth and love.
Exactly.
And a reaction is an in-the-moment decision, not filtered by your rationale or your reasoning. It is a reaction and an immediate emotional response, emotional reaction to what you're immediately feeling. But what we ought to be doing is respond, which means reasoning takes full control and says, well, what is the best thing to do here? What is the most important thing? What is the most loving thing? The most true thing? The most good thing? It takes a second and says, it steps back and says, okay, objectively, what is the right way to handle this?
Exactly.
And if we're talking about disagreeing with Trump and everything, you might say like, oh, well, he's violently removing people out of their homes and forcing them to be removed from the country.
So let's look objectively.
Exactly. Objectively, you stand back and you say, okay, what's happening? What's happening? So you have a government and you have people who have come into the country illegally, according to that government. And that government is now saying, you can't do that. We have to take you out. And if you want to come back, you can do it legally.
And there's just going to be a line for that, and we have to fix the immigration system.
And in the nitty-gritty, things can get testy. And that does happen. And I'm not saying that ICE is completely perfect in every way.
Also, that's a part of law enforcement, period. That's not
Yes.
just a statistic that's relegated to ICE. That's
Absolutely.
just part of typical law enforcement with your local police department.
Yes. So again, like I said, it's a response and an objective step back saying, okay, this is what's true. What does it mean in the grand scheme of things? So there are specific instances, again, where that might be worth discussing. But again, we're talking about responding rather than reacting. And we're not talking about responding with emotions. We're talking about responding with truth and love. And I think a big issue and a big contributor to all of that has been social media and its influence on the way people think.
Exactly.
Not only does it literally rot our brains to a certain level if we've been on screens for exactly. It reframes our literal rhetoric and our reasoning. It destroys the reasoning part of our brain to where we can't literally reason in truth. We focus on the back side of our brain, the emotional side, and we react emotionally.
Well, and this gets back to, if you respond to someone out of an emotion that's going to change, and probably, it could change at any minute. It can change at any spur of the moment. You could be scared one minute, you could be totally at peace the next. And versus an objective truth that's always going to be true. For example, like, you are a human being made in the image of God. And that's a whole another conversation that's theological, but you have free will. You have the right to choose specifically how you're going to live your life, but God has divine plan over that. Those are objective truths that Donald Trump has free will.
He is made in the image of God.
Joe Biden has free will.
Absolutely.
Saddam Hussein had free will. Osama bin Laden had free will. Does that mean everything they did and everything they thought and everything they acted upon, all the violence that happened at 9/11 was necessarily part of God's divine plan and something he was like, thumbs up, great job, guys? Absolutely not. No. But we know God allows evil to happen so he can show us what the good is. We know God allows evil because there has to be some sort of standard for good.
Right, and man brought that evil in, by the way.
Yes,
just for 100%. The record. Yeah, it wasn't God just saying, I'm just going to start letting evil things happen and just all that. It was man brought that in.
Exactly.
And that's a result of man's choices and result of the free will that we have. We've chosen that pathway. So part of it is living in our own consequences.
Exactly. And I think when it comes back to the big picture, we're looking at political violence, and it is becoming a nearly daily occurrence in this country. If you wear... we'll just tell a personal example. We have a family member who he was at a store and he was wearing a MAGA cap. And someone literally came into the store. We don't know how they found out about this. They came into the store, physically knocked the cap off his head, and ran out the store. Just because he was wearing a Trump hat. Never seen this guy before. This guy just literally came in. We don't know if he saw it from outside or what happened. And he didn't do anything else, didn't say a word.
Ran in, hit the cap, and ran out.
It is a literal matter of he wasn't even willing to have a conversation with you. Hey, why are you wearing a MAGA hat? He's a fascist and a Nazi, right? Even coming in with an understanding of who Trump is, but willing to have a conversation about it. That's a totally different mindset than coming in and knocking someone's cap off.
Exactly.
So when we look at political violence in our culture, we need to condemn every chance we get. We condemn it every time we can. I mean,
and not only condemn it, but cause people to and encourage people to walk in a way that is treating people made in the image of God, which means seeing that person as a human and somebody with value and purpose that God loves and that God wants to save if they aren't saved.
Exactly.
And they're not perfect, neither am I. No one's really perfect, but ultimately we all need to be obviously loving. That's kind of the rhetoric that we all hope that everyone agrees with. But treating someone who made in the image of God means to acknowledge the person for who they are and to see them through the lens of somebody made with purpose and made in the image of God.
But also someone that has to choose, in order to see their life become any better, to submit to objective truth. Because the minute we don't submit to objective truth is when we go off the rails. We start living by emotion. We start letting media rhetoric from either side literally create violence across the spectrum, but extremely overwhelmingly on the left. They call it TDS as a joke, but it's literally people think Trump is the source of all their problems, rather than going, no, maybe I'm not dealing in objective truth. Or maybe, yes, Trump's doing something wrong, but it's not my job to take a gun and go shoot him at the White House. So just as we close, I want to do one little thing, and this was kind of our call to action. We'd like everybody to take a moment, this week specifically, and take 5 minutes. Turn off your phone, disconnect, just kind of take a minute to step away and just contemplate the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, the recent Islamic shooting in Austin, Texas that killed 3 people, the recent shooting at the Jewish synagogue up north, I think it was Minnesota. Just think about those opportunities and think, if you were a person going into a situation with someone you disagree with, if that person was extremely opposed to you, would you rather give them an opportunity to have a conversation, or would you rather silence their voice? And I really want that question to think about. If you had to choose between the two, what would you choose? Would you rather hope beyond hope that they would come around and see the objective truth that is what we call conservatism and ultimately godly values? Or would you try to silence their voice? And which one honestly gives you the better life? Which one brings you joy and peace, is knowing that you've found a new friend after long, hard discussions, and that you, or even someone who still continues to disagree with you, but you can have normal discussions, versus literally sending them to their grave. This is where we're at in our culture, and I think this is my call to action, and I think our call to action is, we would beg you to take 5 minutes this week and just pray over this country, pray over your own heart and where you stand in terms of political violence. But this will literally destroy morality. This will not destroy morality, it's an objective truth. This will destroy American society. This will destroy how we treat other people. This will destroy relationships. This will destroy the political system as we know it in America. And we do not take this lightly, and I think every Christian should not take this lightly either. So, sorry, how would you close? Is there anything you'd add to that call to action?
No, I think you summed it up well. Just, again, treating people in the image of God reframes your whole view of life. So I think that'll cause people to rethink, if they see people that way, I think it'll cause them to rethink their actions. And that produces ultimately thoughts of reasoning and objective truth, Lord willing, but ultimately leading people to Christ and walking in his ways, walking in the ways of godliness and not godlessness. And that's kind of where our country's headed today. And we are, in a sense, partially there. So it's a call to action for us all, even Christians specifically, saying, how do we show people how to treat people in the image of God? So again, we thank you guys for watching this video, and take some time afterwards to just pray, meditate on this, and again, thank you guys for watching. We try to do episodes every couple weeks, so tune in when you can. Subscribe and like our channel. We have a website that we can post in the description of this video if you want to know more about what we do and what we believe. We have a whole whole page outlined for you there, so you can go check that out. Thank you guys again for watching, and we will see you next couple weeks.
2 weeks from now. Yeah. Y'all have a good week.